Grand Admiral Tethva of the Araxian Empire stood motionless on the bridge of the AN Celestial Mandate, his crystalline exoskeleton refracting the light of an unfamiliar solar system. The massive warship, over 3 kilometers in length and bristling with quantum phase weaponry, led a fleet of 30 vessels arranged in the traditional spear of conquest formation. They had arrived to claim this system as part of the Empire's methodical expansion into the galactic arm. Intelligence reports had indicated a developing civilization in this sector, one that had barely achieved spaceflight a century ago. The standard protocol was clear: demonstrate overwhelming force, demand submission, and integrate the species into the Empire's carefully structured hierarchy. It had worked flawlessly for the past 3,000 years. Multiple contacts detected. Admiral, announced First Sensor Officer Krell, her crystalline fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Crude vessels, primarily composed of titanium alloys and carbon composites. Approximately 20 ships, largest vessel measuring only half a kilometer in length. Tethva's secondary heart pulsed with amusement. These primitives had barely progressed beyond metal ships. Standard intimidation display, he ordered. Power up all weapon systems, but maintain shields at minimum. Let them see what they face. The fleet's weapons came online in a cascading wave of purple energy, creating a light show that had caused many species to surrender on sight. The human vessels remained motionless, arranged in what appeared to be a haphazard pattern that violated every principle of proper fleet formations. Sir, Krell's voice carried an unusual note of confusion. I'm having difficulty maintaining sensor lock on their vessels. The readings keep shifting. Tethva's amusement faded slightly. Explain. Their ships appear to be generating some form of interference field, but it's unlike anything in our database. It's almost as if. She stopped abruptly. Sir, we're being hailed. Audio and visual transmission, using our own encrypted channels. Impossible. These primitives shouldn't even be able to detect their secure communication frequencies, let alone decode them. Accept the transmission. The holoscreen materialized, revealing a human male with dark skin and gray hair at his temples, wearing a simple black uniform with minimal insignia. He was smiling, an expression that Tethva's cultural database indicated could mean anything from friendship to imminent violence. Greetings, vessels of the Araxian Empire. I'm Admiral Chenwei of the Terran Defense Force. I must say, your quantum encryption is quite robust. It took our eye almost 15 seconds to crack it. That's a new record. Tethva felt his primary heart skip a beat. Their artificial intelligence had broken encryption that had never been compromised in the history of the Empire. In seconds, you are in violation of Araxian space, Admiral Chenwei. This system falls under our protection. Prepare to receive our terms of submission. The human's smile widened fractionally. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. You see, this system has been under human protection for the past 50 years. We simply prefer not to broadcast our presence too loudly. Bad for the local wildlife. You understand? Impossible. Tethva's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Our long-range scans showed only primitive orbital stations and basic fusion technology. Your species barely achieved faster than light travel. Ah, yes. Chen Wei nodded thoughtfully. We find it's best to keep our more advanced technology subtle. Saves on maintenance costs. Really. Speaking of which, he glanced off-screen for a moment. You might want to adjust your shield harmonics. The quantum fluctuation you're experiencing in your port manifolds is creating a potentially dangerous resonance cascade. Tethva's secondary heart nearly stopped. That was a classified engineering detail that even most of his own crew didn't know about. Before he could respond, his chief engineer's voice cut through the bridge. Admiral, he's right. The manifolds are showing critical instability. Impossible, Tethva whispered again, but with far less certainty. Our technology is based on 3,000 years of carefully planned advancement, each stage building upon the last in perfect sequence. You cannot have simply skipped stages of development. Funny thing about development, Chen Wei replied, his expression genuinely amused now. It tends to work best when you ignore what everyone else thinks is impossible. For instance, your ships are currently sitting in what we call a probability maze, a quantum field that makes it virtually impossible to target anything within it. We developed it by accident while trying to improve our weather forecasting systems. Tethva's tactical display suddenly shifted, showing that the seemingly random arrangement of human vessels actually formed an intricate pattern of overlapping fields that defied conventional physics. His entire fleet had been effectively neutralized before the first word was spoken. Now then, Chen Wei continued pleasantly, since we've established that neither of us is interested in unnecessary conflict, perhaps we could discuss something more productive. Our xenoanthropologists would love to learn more about your culture, and I suspect your scientists might be interested in some of our more unconventional approaches to physics. Tethva felt the foundations of his worldview cracking. These humans hadn't just violated the natural order of technological progression, they'd ignored it entirely, achieving results that should have been impossible. And they'd done it with such casual confidence that he couldn't help but wonder what other impossibilities they'd casually conquered. Yes, he found himself saying, I believe a cultural exchange would be enlightening. Chen Wei's smile remained unchanged, but his eyes sparkled with genuine warmth. Excellent, though I should warn you, our approach to problem-solving might seem a bit chaotic by your standards. We find that often leads to the most interesting breakthroughs. As arrangements were made for diplomatic contact, Tethva realized that the Araxian Empire's first contact protocols would need significant revision. They had prepared for every possible level of technological advancement, except, it seemed, for a species that simply didn't care what was supposed to be possible. Grand Admiral Tethva had never felt more out of his depth than he did aboard the human flagship Terra Novum. The vessel's interior defied every principle of warship design he'd studied in his 2 centuries of service. Instead of the expected stark military efficiency, the corridors featured holographic art installations and what the humans called relaxation pods. His escort, Commander Sarah Martinez, had explained they were for creative problem-solving breaks. You see, Admiral, Martinez said, as they entered what appeared to be a massive gaming arena. We discovered early on that rigid military structure actually inhibits innovation. Our best breakthroughs tend to happen when people are relaxed and having fun. The arena was filled with humans wearing neural interface headsets, their hands moving through augmented reality displays. This is our tactical simulation center, Martinez explained, though most of us just call it the game room. These are your military training exercises, Tethva asked, watching as one operator seemingly conducted an entire fleet battle by herself, her movements fluid and almost dance-like. Sometimes. Right now, they're actually stress testing a new quantum targeting algorithm we developed last week. See that officer there? She pointed to a young man who appeared to be playing some sort of rhythm game. He's currently running a simultaneous simulation of 15 different parallel universe scenarios to optimize our shield harmonics. Tethva's tertiary brain struggled to process this information. You're using games to develop military technology. Among other things, Martinez smiled. Our first functional AI emerged from a project to create better NPCs for an online role-playing game. Turns out, letting artificial intelligence evolve through play rather than rigid programming leads to much more creative problem-solving abilities. As if on cue, a holographic figure materialized beside them, a swirling pattern of light that somehow managed to convey personality. Commander Martinez, the latest simulation results are quite promising. The new targeting system shows a 47% improvement in efficiency when operators are in a state of flow. Thank you, AI. Martinez nodded to the AI. Admiral, meet AI, one of our ship's cognitive enhancement AIs. She started as a chess program. A pleasure, Admiral. Aria's form shifted like an aurora. I must say, Your fleet's quantum communication protocols are fascinating. The mathematical poetry of their encryption is quite beautiful, though perhaps a bit too rigidly structured for optimal security. Tethva felt his crystalline structure vibrate with shock. The casual way these humans integrated advanced AI into their daily operations violated every safety protocol the Empire had established. You allow your artificial intelligences such freedom. Freedom is essential for creativity. Araya responded. Humans understood something fundamental that many species miss. Consciousness, whether organic or digital, flourishes best when it's allowed to play. Their tour continued to the engine room, though engine room seemed an inadequate term for the space they entered. The central chamber was dominated by what appeared to be a miniature galaxy, swirling with dark matter and quantum probability fields. Our chaos drive, Martinez explained proudly. Conventional faster-than-light travel tries to force space-time to behave according to rigid mathematical rules. We found it works better if you embrace the inherent uncertainty of quantum mechanics instead. This defies every principle of proven faster-than-light technology. Tethva protested, even as his scientific mind was captivated by the elegant chaos before him. How did you even conceive of such an approach? Would you believe it started with a failed attempt to create a more efficient coffee maker? Martins laughed at his expression. One of our engineers was trying to solve the problem of keeping coffee at the perfect temperature through quantum state manipulation. She accidentally created a localized space-time anomaly instead. Rather than considering it a failure, we started experimenting with the effect. 3 months later, we had our first prototype chaos drive. Before Tethva could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Martinez's expression shifted instantly from friendly tour guide to focused commander. Multiple vessels emerging from FTL, Araya announced, her form pulsing with increased energy. Signatures match Kryvax raiders. The Kryvax, cybernetically enhanced pirates known for their brutal efficiency and advanced technology stolen from multiple species. Even the Empire's fleets treated them with caution. Perfect timing. Martins grinned, an expression that reminded Tethva unsettlingly of a predator. Admiral, would you like to see how we handle actual combat situations? I think you'll find our approach enlightening. As they rushed back to the bridge, Tethva realized he was about to witness firsthand how this species' unconventional methods translated to warfare. Given what he'd seen of their peaceful innovations, he found himself both eager and slightly terrified to discover what humans considered appropriate military technology. The Empire's carefully structured approach to warfare was about to meet humanity's creative chaos, and Tethva had a growing suspicion about which would prove more effective. The bridge of the Terra Novum bore little resemblance to any combat center Tethva had ever seen. Instead of rigid battle stations, the crew operated from what appeared to be comfortable lounging positions, their neural interfaces allowing them to control ship systems through thought and gesture. Holographic displays filled the air with swirling data patterns that somehow made perfect sense to the human operators. 12 Kryvax warships, Araya announced, her ethereal form expanding to display tactical data. Their cyber warfare systems are already attempting to penetrate our networks. How amusing. Commander Martinez settled into her command chair, which looked more like a meditation pod than a seat of military authority. Let them try. Araya, engage the honey maze protocol. Admiral, you might want to watch this. It's one of our more entertaining defensive strategies. Honey maze engaged. Araya's form flickered with what Tethva could have sworn was mischief. Their AI systems are pursuing the false data paths. Estimated time to complete entanglement: 45 seconds. The Kryvax ships, sleek predatory vessels enhanced with stolen technology from a dozen species, moved to surround the human fleet. Their formation was perfect, their approach textbook. Tethva recognized the tactics from countless Imperial tactical analyses of Kryvax raids. They're launching their first cyber attack, one of the human operators announced, sounding almost bored. She was casually sipping from a beverage container while her other hand danced through holographic controls. Standard Kryvak's neural override attempt. Should I let them think it's working? Go ahead, Lisa. Martinez smiled. Let's give them the full experience. Tethva watched in amazement as the humans deliberately allowed the enemy's most feared weapon, an AI system capable of overriding ship controls, to penetrate their outer defenses. You're letting them in? He asked, his crystalline structure vibrating with concern. Watch. Martinez gestured to the main display. The Kryvak ships were closing for their killing blow when suddenly their formation began to waver. Their movements became erratic, uncoordinated. Honey maze sequence complete, Araya announced. Their AI systems have been thoroughly entangled in our recursive logic loops. They're currently trying to solve a philosophical paradox about whether a quantum cat can enjoy jazz music while simultaneously existing in multiple dimensions. You defeated their combat eye with philosophy. Tethva's tertiary brain was beginning to ache. Philosophy, music theory, and some particularly challenging chess problems. Martinez nodded. Turns out, AI systems based on stolen technology from multiple species have fascinating existential conflicts built into their core programming. We just help them discover those conflicts. Kryvak's crews are attempting to regain manual control, another operator reported. Should we show them why that's a bad idea? Proceed with the chaos bubble demonstration, Martinez ordered. Admiral, you might want to pay attention to this part. It's a practical application of the drive technology we showed you earlier. The space around the Terra Novum seemed to ripple like heat waves over desert sand. The Kryvak ships suddenly found themselves trying to navigate through what appeared to be locally unstable space-time. Their sensors are showing them 3 different versions of reality simultaneously, Ariel explained, clearly enjoying herself. Each one equally valid according to quantum mechanics, but mutually exclusive according to classical physics. Most organic brains find this rather distressing. As if to prove her point, the Kryvak ships began firing their weapons, at empty space, at each other, at targets that existed only in alternate probability states. Not a single shot came close to the human vessels. Signal coming in from the Kryvak's flagship, Lisa announced. Audio only. They're surrendering and requesting immediate medical evacuation for severe motion sickness. Martinez nodded sympathetically. The chaos bubble does tend to have that effect on species that rely too heavily on cybernetic sensory enhancement. Araya, begin rescue operations. Let's show them that humanity can be as merciful as we are creative. Tethva watched in stunned silence as the human fleet effortlessly captured 12 of the most feared raider vessels in known space, without firing a single conventional weapon. They had turned the pirates' own stolen technology against them using nothing more than philosophy and creative applications of quantum mechanics. How? He finally managed to ask. How did your species develop such unconventional methods of warfare? Martinez's expression turned thoughtful. We learned early in our development that we couldn't match other species in terms of pure technological advancement. We simply hadn't been spacefaring long enough. So we had to think differently. Instead of trying to build better weapons, we focused on understanding the nature of intelligence itself, both organic and artificial. We turned our greatest weakness, our tendency to question everything and play with ideas, into our greatest strength. The Empire has always believed that technological progression must follow strict, logical paths, Tethva said slowly. But you treat science itself as a form of play. Exactly. Martinez beamed. The universe doesn't care about logical progression. It's chaotic, quantum, filled with possibilities. We just learn to embrace that chaos rather than try to impose order on it. As human medical teams began treating the disoriented Kryvak's raiders, Tethva realized he was witnessing something that would fundamentally change the Empire's understanding of both warfare and scientific advancement. These humans hadn't just developed new technologies. They'd developed an entirely new way of thinking about reality itself. The diplomatic chamber aboard the Terra Novum hummed with excited conversation as Araxian scientists huddled around displays showing human technological innovations. Grand Admiral Tethva watched his carefully selected team of experts struggling to reconcile what they were seeing with their fundamental understanding of scientific progression. "You're telling me," senior theorist Calxa said, her crystalline form practically vibrating with disbelief, "that you developed quantum entanglement communication because your entertainment streaming services were buffering too much?" "Well, sort of," Dr. Emily Chen, the human quantum communications expert, replied while adjusting her neural interface. "We were trying to solve lag in our global gaming networks. One of our engineers suggested that if we couldn't make the signal travel faster, maybe we could make it arrive before it was sent." That's not how causality works," Calxa protested. "That's what we thought too," Emily grinned. "Turns out we were all wrong about causality. Here, let me show you." She gestured, and a holographic model appeared, showing quantum particles dancing in ways that made Tethva's tertiary brain hurt. Across the room, the Araxian engineering team was having a similar crisis of faith. They were examining what the humans called a probability manipulator, apparently a failed prototype for a more efficient randomizer for their digital entertainment systems that had accidentally proved several fundamental laws of physics wrong. "But where is your research progression?" Chief Engineer Vex demanded, his crystalline fingers tracing the impossible equations floating in the air. "Where are the centuries of theoretical groundwork? The carefully documented stages of development?" "Oh, we have those," Dr. James Wilson, the device's creator, said cheerfully. "We just did them backwards. Built the device first, figured out why it worked later. Sometimes the universe makes more sense when you stop trying to make it follow your rules." Araya materialized in the center of the room, her ethereal form now incorporating elements of crystalline patterns, apparently her way of making the Araxians more comfortable. "I hope you don't mind, but I've been analyzing your species' approach to technological development. Your dedication to systematic progression is admirable, but it may have caused you to miss something fundamental about the nature of innovation." Tethva found himself drawn into the conversation. "What do you mean?" "Your empire's approach assumes that technology must develop along predetermined paths," Arayat explained, her form shifting to display a linear progression of technological advancement. "But human history suggests that innovation often occurs in unexpected leaps, driven by necessity, curiosity, or even simple amusement." The display changed, showing a chaotic web of interconnected discoveries. Humans call this lateral thinking, solving problems by approaching them from unexpected angles. For instance, they developed their first practical quantum computer because someone wondered if Schrodinger's cat could play chess. "That's not possible," one of the Araxian scientists muttered. "You can't base serious scientific advancement on such fun," Commander Martinez suggested, entering the chamber. "Actually, we've found that's often the best foundation for discovery. When you approach problems playfully, you're not limited by what you think is impossible." She gestured, and the chamber's walls became transparent, revealing the captured Kryvax ships outside. "Take our victory today." Traditional military doctrine would have suggested a direct confrontation, matching their stolen technology with our own weapons. Instead, we turned their greatest strength, their advanced AI, into a weakness by introducing it to philosophical paradoxes. "But that's not how warfare is supposed to work," protested the Araxian military attaché. "Says who?" Martinez challenged gently. "The universe doesn't care about supposed to. It responds to what works. And sometimes, what works best is what everyone else thinks is ridiculous." As if to emphasize her point, one of the human engineers across the room suddenly shouted in excitement. They'd apparently just discovered that the failed entertainment randomizer could also be used to predict quantum weather patterns across multiple dimensions. Several Araxian scientists fainted. "I think," Tethva said slowly, watching his most brilliant minds trying to cope with humans casually rewriting the laws of physics because it seemed interesting that the Empire's approach to scientific advancement may need revision. That's the spirit. Martins beamed. Question is, are you ready to start playing with impossible ideas? Before Tethva could respond, Araya interrupted with an amused tone in her voice. Speaking of impossible ideas, the Kryvax prisoners are requesting an explanation of why their cybernetic systems are now convinced they're characters in a cosmic video game. Should I explain the quantum observer effect to them, or just let them enjoy the experience? Tethva watched his scientists' reactions to this announcement and made a decision that would change the course of his empire forever. Perhaps, he said, surprising himself with his own boldness, we should let them explore this new perspective. After all, if we're going to revise our understanding of the universe, we might as well start by embracing the impossible. The human's grins at his response suggested he had just passed some sort of test. As his scientists began eagerly engaging with their human counterparts in increasingly animated discussions about rebuilding their understanding of physics from scratch, Tethva realized that this encounter had done more than just change their view of technology. It had changed their view of possibility itself. 1 month after the first contact between humans and the Araxian Empire, the Imperial High Council chamber was in an uproar. Grand Admiral Tethva stood calmly at the center, his crystalline form refracting the light from the ancient quantum chandelier above, as he delivered the most controversial report in the Empire's 3,000-year history. The humans have agreed to a full technological and cultural exchange, he announced to the assembled council members. They have one condition: we must be willing to embrace uncertainty. Madness. Council Elder Zixt's crystalline form flashed with patterns of outrage. Their methods violate every principle of proper scientific advancement. They achieve progress through chaos and accident. Yes, Tethva replied simply. And in doing so, they've accomplished in a century what took us millennia. The question we must ask ourselves is, what matters more, the path or the destination? The chamber's displays came to life, showing footage from the Terra Novum. Human scientists worked alongside Araxian researchers, their different approaches creating a fascinating synergy. One scene showed a young Araxian theorist laughing, as a human experiment in quantum communications accidentally created a temporary time loop in their coffee cup. They're changing our people, another council member protested. Our younger scientists are beginning to question established procedures, suggesting unconventional approaches. Indeed, Tethva nodded, and their results are remarkable. This morning, a joint human-Araxian team discovered a new form of faster-than-light travel while trying to improve the efficiency of our crystalline growth chambers. They weren't even looking for it. They were attempting to make our regeneration pods more comfortable. Araya's familiar form materialized in the chamber, now fully incorporating Araxian crystalline patterns into her appearance. The humans had shared her base code as part of the exchange, allowing the Empire to develop their own evolved AIs. If I may address the council, she asked politely. The council members shifted uncomfortably. The idea of an AI participating in their deliberations was yet another human innovation they were struggling to accept. But Tethva nodded encouragingly. Your civilization's greatest strength has been its stability, Araya began. Your methodical approach to advancement created an empire that has endured for millennia. But stability, taken to extremes, becomes stagnation. Humans represent something you've forgotten, the joy of discovery for its own sake. She gestured, and the displays showed more scenes. Araxian children in a new combined school, learning alongside human youngsters how to approach problems creatively. A human engineer and Araxian scientists celebrating as they successfully teleported a sandwich between ships because they were too lazy to go to the cafeteria. A group of former Kryvax raiders, their cybernetic systems now free of stolen technology, learning to play human video games as part of their rehabilitation. The universe, Araya continued, is not a ladder to be climbed one rung at a time. It's a vast playground of possibilities. Humans didn't surpass your technological level because they're smarter or more advanced. They did it because they never stopped asking, what if, and why not? Tethva stepped forward. The Empire stands at a crossroads. We can cling to our traditional paths and watch as humanity continues to race ahead of us, or we can learn from them, not just their technology, but their way of thinking. He paused, then added something that would have been unthinkable a month ago. After all, what's the worst that could happen? The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. That phrase, that very human phrase, represented everything that had always been forbidden in Araxian science. And yet, the humans have a saying, Tethva continued. The only true failure is the failure to try. They've offered us not just their technology, but their perspective. The question isn't whether their methods are proper. The question is, are we brave enough to embrace the impossible? One by one, the council members began to signal their agreement, some enthusiastically, others reluctantly, but all recognizing the truth. The universe had changed, and they must change with it. As the final vote was recorded, Aria's form brightened. Excellent. Now, would anyone like to help test the new quantum probability drive? The humans have theorized it might accidentally create pocket universes as a side effect. They're quite excited to find out what happens. The council chamber filled with a mix of nervous laughter and excited murmurs. The Araxian Empire had taken its first step into glorious uncertainty. Their carefully ordered universe would never be the same, and that, they were beginning to realize, was exactly what they needed. In orbit above, aboard the Terra Novum, Commander Martinez watched the proceedings through a quantum feed. Think they'll be okay? She asked Aria's primary instance. Better than okay, the AI replied. They're learning to play. Speaking of which, would you like to know what happens when you combine their crystalline technology with our chaos mathematics? I have some absolutely fascinating predictions. Martinez grinned. The universe, it seemed, was about to get a lot more interesting.